Good morning, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us. I'll wait a couple seconds here while everyone's getting settled in and hopping on to Zoom. Hope everyone's having a really good morning. I know I'm happy that the sun is shining, which is so nice. All right, well, let's get started. Thank you so much for coming to our webinar about pharmacy benefit trends in 2023 and beyond, presented here by Schuyler File, JD, GBDS. He is an employee benefits consultant and a principal with us. I just want to go over a couple housekeeping items with you before we get started. First of all, if this is your first time attending a webinar, welcome. We're excited you're here. There's a couple things that we do a little differently, which is that we do a recording of this webinar, and you will also receive a copy of the slides and a link to the recording, whether you can stay for the whole time or just a little bit of time. So don't worry if you miss anything, you will be getting a recording as well as a copy of the slides. This is also approved for 1 hour CE credits for SHRM in HRCI. You do have to listen to the full presentation in order to attain those credits, but it's a little bit of an honor system. Those credits will be available to you at the end of the presentation, as well as in the presentation slides in our email. We also will have a Q&A session, and you can ask Schuyler any question you want about this topic. And just in case we don't get to your question, we do have his contact information up on the slide if you would like to call or email him. Without further ado, let me introduce you to Schuyler. He has been a business partner and consultant at Houseman Group. He thrives on connecting people and businesses with expertise needed to solve their most pressing challenges. Most of the time, that involves creating a comprehensive benefit strategy to attract and retain talent for his clients' organizational success. Schuyler is also very passionate about coaching and mentoring newer benefits professionals so that they can create efficient and repeatable processes to manage their benefits programs. Schuyler's connecting and mentoring students extends to the work he does as an active member of several nonprofit organizations in the Metro Milwaukee area. He is part of the Metro Milwaukee Society for Human Resource Management, also known as Metro Milwaukee SHRM. He is also a board member of Sharp Literacy, an organization that provides STEAM-based educational opportunities to Metro Milwaukee area students. Prior to joining Houseman Group, Schuyler practiced law with a national health firm where he advised healthcare providers on a wide range of corporate and transactional matters. He received his JD from Regent University School of Law and completed his undergraduate at Hillsdale College, where he majored in marketing management. Schuyler holds a Wisconsin insurance license for life, accident, health, property, and casualty. Welcome, Schuyler.
Thank you, Cassie, and thank you to all of our attendees today for joining the webinar. We're very excited to have you participate today, and this is definitely a hot topic. As Cassie said, I enjoy helping folks find solutions for their most pressing challenges, and as long as I've been in the insurance arena, employee benefits, pharmacy has been a very hot topic. Seems to never go away. And so I think you'll find some of this information relevant, as I'd imagine many of you are very involved in the management of your benefit plans. Just a quick overview. We're going to cover, for the first part of the presentation, some trends in the pharmacy benefit space, what that will look like, in this year, in the coming years, and what we can expect coming to market and how that might impact your health plans. We're going to look at the impact of clinical management on your pharmacy and what that does to cost. And then we have a couple of case studies. We'll go through a first case study of existing client and some strategies that we've implemented. We'll also, after that, cover how the rebate system works in a little bit of detail and how coupons can be valuable to your employees and to managing costs. We have a second case study, and then we'll talk at the very end about some emerging solutions and have a few takeaways for you, whether you're a fully insured plan or a self-funded plan, some solutions that you might consider to better manage your costs. So diving right into the trends in pharmacy information here. It's not a pretty picture, and this is going to continue to be an issue for the foreseeable future for health plans. This is typically, for the clients that we work with, has been the fastest growing area of spend within their medical plan, and that's been a sustained trend for a long period of time. 88% of the pharmacy pipeline over the next 5 years is classified as a specialty product. And what that means really for folks on this call is that any drug that's over $1,000, we kind of classify as specialty. You can see that the pipeline of R&D for specialty drugs in 2014 was just over about 10,000, and that number's almost doubled to just over 20,000 drugs in the pharmacy R&D pipeline. So not necessarily all these drugs will come to market, but the amount of dollars and the amount of drugs in the pipeline has nearly doubled. A big driver of that is the change after the Affordable Care Act of unlimited maximums, unlimited lifetime maximums. These pharmacy companies now have an unlimited funding source really for some of these high cost drugs that maybe could not have been paid for in the past when you have unlimited maximums in the plans. And so we've seen that growth really accelerate, and we don't anticipate significant slowdown in that in the near term. When you look at rare disease drugs or orphan drugs, sometimes called, that is also an area of significant growth. Orphan drugs are often drugs that are costing hundreds of thousands of dollars annually for members who are utilizing those drugs. If we look in the same time frame back in 2014, there were about just shy of 400 drugs that were being developed at that time in the R&D phase. Again, not quite double, but we're approaching 700 drugs in 2022 that were in the R&D pipeline. Specialty would also include that orphan or rare disease drug group category. And in that space, we're expecting that the specialty drugs, so orphan drugs, any drug really over $1,000, we don't include maybe insulin that in some cases approaching $1,000 per month, but we don't include that especially. But in general, anything other than insulin over $1,000 a month, we expect that those specialty drugs will grow to be 2% of the total drug spend, but account for 55% or more of the overall pharmacy. And you may say, wow, well, our plan's already utilizing 55 plus or 60% utilization for specialty drugs. This is just an average. Certainly some clients have less than 55% utilization, but from an expectation standpoint, we would anticipate that across our book of business and across the industry, really 55% of the pharmacy spend will be specialty drugs. There is some silver lining or maybe some bright spots that maybe provide some limited relief around the biosimilars. So biosimilars are coming to the market, and these are alternatives for some of the high cost, very common specialty drugs like Humira and Stelara. Both Humira and Stelara have approved biosimilars for 2023. There's already one on the market for Humira, but it doesn't have interchangeability status, meaning that provider cannot just exchange that Humira for the biosimilar. There's going to be a second biosimilar for Humira later in the year that does have interchangeability status. So kind of like a generic, instead of getting the brand, you could have the generic. Well, it's not a brand versus generic, but it's a biosimilar to Humira. There will be interchangeability status available with that second biosimilar coming to the market later in 2023. And for many of you, you're aware Humira is likely the most utilized specialty drug on your plan. 2023, these biosimilars could help reshape the marketplace, but we'll talk about a little later on. Many formularies are not necessarily including Humira because of the rebate situation associated with the benefit of keeping Humira for the PBMs versus some of the biosimilars that are lower cost. We anticipate that biosimilars will cost 15 to 35% less than the drug that they are biosimilar for. But as I've noted here, the first biosimilar that I mentioned only has a net cost of 5% less than Humira because AbbVie is the manufacturer of Humira, has significantly increased their rebates for 2023 to fight the adoption of some of these biosimilars. So our estimate is that the rebates are up to about 70% of the cost of the drug that someone's paying at retail. When we look at what's coming in the pipeline, I mentioned that there's a lot of development of specialty drugs. Where we're really seeing a significant push in the specialty drug space is in the oncology arena. Oncology has about 2 times more drugs in clinical trials than any other category. And often these drugs are very high cost. In some cases, members maybe won't be on them for necessarily their lifetime, but often have a very long utilization of some of these oncology drugs to fight cancers and the conditions that members have. We're also expect to continue to see a lot of development of products in the immunology space, hematology, infectious disease, and ophthalmology. So, one of the questions, that we think it's important for plan sponsors to be thinking about is, what does the future look like in the next 70 years what does the future look like with 70 plus new gene therapy products expected in the next 5 years? There's 4 products slated for approval in 2023. And these are very high cost gene therapy products. They include a hemophilia drug, a sickle cell drug, a beta thalassemia drug, and a Duchenne muscular dystrophy drugs. Some of these conditions already have products in the marketplace, and they are hundreds of thousands of dollars. And I don't know the pricing necessarily on what these will all look like, but we anticipate that they will be significant costs. Now, these are conditions that are extremely debilitating. They're rare, and they are life-changing. Some of these therapies are life-changing for members, but is our healthcare system and our commercial payment model for the folks on this call who are running health plans, some of them self-funded, it really wasn't built to sustain this type of product emergence at such a high level. And again, I go back to, I think a lot of this is driven by the fact that now plans have to have unlimited lifetime maximums for their population. And so now with this essentially unlimited funding source for pharmaceutical companies, they have ramped up development of some of these drugs, recognizing that employers are basically required to cover these treatments. And so, it's essentially a blank check. Now, it takes a while for these drugs to get to market, but as we've seen since 2014, the manufacturers have certainly understood that this blank check exists, and the blank check is being written by employers who offer health insurance to employees, which is most employers. It's an important part of the benefit package. So what can we do as employers, as plan sponsors, as consultants to manage these costs? There's a lot of different strategies that are available to plan sponsors. Frankly, if you're self-funded, you have more levers available to you to pull. If you're fully insured, you're somewhat limited. And we'll talk about what a lot of fully insured carriers are doing to limit your ability and maybe not necessarily benefit the plan, but benefit their bottom line. Oftentimes, when a self-funded group is looking at what can we do, they're often really interested in making sure that their rebates are the best in negotiating really favorable rebates. For smaller groups, the ability to negotiate favorable rebates is somewhat limited, and so we've seen a lot of smaller groups utilize coalitions to maximize their rebates. They're able to pool together with other similar employers to achieve better rebates and then be able to achieve on their own, and that's not an uncommon strategy. But if you look at this pie chart here, you can see, in our view, rebates are really a small portion of the pie. There's a lot more opportunity around drug utilization to manage cost. And so, as consultants, this is where we spend a lot of our time identifying, from a utilization standpoint, how can we select partners that are really engaged in helping to manage utilization. We want employees to have access to drugs that they need, but is there a more cost-effective way to obtain them? Are we partnering with a pharmacy benefit manager that is using appropriate protocols to manage utilization of the drugs? Best practices, clinically best practices to be gatekeepers so that folks aren't just getting drugs that maybe they don't need or that even could be harmful and dangerous for them. So drug utilization is a big key. Rebates are important, but we believe that drug utilization is really the driver of spend for our clients. And that's why we spend a lot of time trying to help manage that. So when you're looking at PBM solutions or consultants to help identify, which solution, the financial wizard one is someone who's really focused on the discounts and rebates, but not necessarily that focused on the clinical component. A pay to play, this is more of that coalition approach. You join a coalition, you do some group purchasing, you get maybe better pricing on the drugs, better rebates, and then often, as I note here, there's some kind of fee or kickback maybe available to the group creating the coalition. And so if you're in that model in particular, you need to be aware of what are the revenue sources for the coalition, and identify, how does this maybe benefit the person recommending the coalition to me. But we have plenty of clients that utilize that approach. And, just when you're identifying, is this the right solution, understand the revenue sources that may be out there for the coalition. And then the approach that we try to take and, that we look at is the contract's important, the financials are important, but, how can we identify a partner in a PBM that's utilizing clinical management tools that will be beneficial to our membership, but also to our bottom line. It really takes a more total risk management approach. And then we help educate and clients, and by we, I mean, oftentimes it's a clinical resource, helps educate clients on making the right choice with respect to alternatives that may be available in the drug channel. So targeting inappropriate use and waste, what does that mean? Well, one way to do that is through the formulary. So there are thousands of drugs in the marketplace. Some of them treat the exact same condition and can have vastly different prices, whether it's a brand or generic or just an alternative drug. And so when we look at the formulary, we want to utilize the lowest net cost drug. So that means maybe not the lowest cost drug, but when you factor in the rebates that are available to the plan sponsor, we want to utilize a formulary that promotes a drug that is the lowest net cost to the plan and ideally to the participant as well. And so that's really important. The other thing that we're really focused on is eliminating drug waste. And so this is particularly relevant in the non-specialty space. We talked about the development of drugs in the specialty space, those higher cost drugs. But in high cost drug area, there's not a lot of development because there's not the margin that some of these manufacturers can achieve with specialty drugs. And what we're also seeing in that space is even drugs that have been on the marketplace for a long time, some manufacturers are increasing the cost because there's not a competitive alternative in the marketplace. And so, we want to eliminate drug waste. If there's alternatives in the marketplace, what can we do to better manage that cost? If we look at the drug waste component, one of the things that we were able to see, if it's not well managed today, when we look at with new clients or clients that are exploring self-funding it from the standard approach, we can typically find anywhere from 3 to 7% savings in their spend through eliminating some of the unnecessary drug waste solutions that may be in the formulary that may be available on a typical formulary. So give you a couple of examples of what that looks like on the next slide. And so this first one is Duexis. It's very common to see on formularies, although it's becoming less common because many consultants are aware of this type of waste within the plan and are getting more savvy to this. And there are certainly other examples, but Duexis is ibuprofen plus Pepsid AC, smashed together in a drug, and it's on many formularies at $3,000. Is that really necessary when you can purchase a drug for $12 if you take ibuprofen and Pepsid? It's maybe inconvenient to have to take 2 pills now instead of 1, but we don't feel that this one drug cost is justified when someone can purchase the 2 drugs at over the counter. Another would be another example here is a folic acid. Sometimes this is on formularies and folks can get this as a drug through their medical plan, and you can get, essentially you can get the vitamin over the counter. So want to dive into a case study example here on the next slide. This was a client that we've worked with. They were approaching 55% plan spend on specialty medications, and recognizing that this was becoming a problem, they decided to take some steps to better manage what had been a pretty open formulary. And so they took a number of steps to do this. One of the things that they did was went to an exclusive specialty pharmacy. And at the time that prior to the implementation of this process, they didn't have a specialty exclusive pharmacy relationship. And there was a couple of downside to that arrangement that we'll talk about. Number one, when you don't have a specialty pharmacy, you don't have control of the channel of where these specialty drugs are going through, so you might not be getting the best cost. Additionally, with a specialty pharmacy that is exclusive, we're able to track the manufacturer coupon utilization and also make sure that with the coupons, that members weren't getting credit for coupon utilization when their actual out-of-pocket costs were nothing or minimal. And so with this specialty pharmacy arrangement, we're able to assign their actual out-of-pocket costs to their out-of-pocket accumulators. And so, for example, if they were using a coupon to pay $500 for their specialty drug, but their actual out-of-pocket cost was only $5, prior to this arrangement, it would show on their out-of-pocket accumulator that they'd spent $500 when in fact it was only $5. And so that was one benefit. And so we prevented the use of these coupons from meeting the members' out-of-pocket maximum when in fact they weren't utilizing those dollars. In this case, this saved the client about $700, or excuse me, they had 700,000 of eligible claims, and it saved them about $150,000 in making this change. A second part of this was, we ended up switching pharmacy benefit managers. And a bigger reason why we thought this was important, they were with a pharmacy, a PBM, a pharmacy benefit manager, whose specialty prior authorization approval rate was about 90%. So what that means really is when someone is prescribed a specialty medication, a best practice is to have prior approval, and most formularies, or excuse me, most PBMs today have a prior authorization approval process, meaning in some cases, do they meet all the criteria necessary to be prescribed this drug? And those processes vary by pharmacy benefit manager, but I've identified 3 different PBMs here who have a significant portion of the market share. I don't want to name names, but they're the big 3. You can Google who the big 3 PBMs are, but their prior authorization approval rate is quite high. And we decided to move to PBM who does a little bit better job of managing that prior authorization approval process in our view. And So this PBM that we selected had about a 68% prior authorization approval rate. And you may say, well, we don't want a pharmacy benefit manager to interfere with our members, access to drugs. And that's certainly one view, but our view is that the PBMs have an incentive, especially if they're sharing in rebates, to not have a very stringent prior authorization approval rate. So they're incentivized to improve more utilization. And if there's a more rigorous process from a plan management, from a cost management standpoint, we're not, again, denying necessary utilization, but there are steps that members should take to make sure that they qualify for this drug. We've uncovered instances where a member is being prescribed a drug, and given some of their other conditions, it could be a life-threatening situation. And so we just think that it's important from a clinical standpoint, from a safety standpoint, that the PBM really evaluate, is this appropriate? And there are many PBMs that have much lower prior author approval rate, and we think that's important. We've estimated that it results that in this case resulted in about 10% plan savings or cost avoidance, because members are not being prescribed these higher cost drugs or not as easily getting access to it. Doesn't mean that they can't get access. And for your members that already have access, oftentimes they're grandfathered in, so they're not even affected. But it's for members who are being prescribed the drugs maybe for the first time, are being limited access to these drugs, or making sure that it truly is a necessary and appropriate utilization for the member. And there's a much greater cost management component there with some of these PBMs that maybe don't have an incentive in sharing in the profits of rebates that drive some of this prior authorization approval. So same client, in the prior authorization process, there was a verbal attestation. So the member said, yes, I met this, versus a actual physical check with the prior PBM. Again, the approval rate for prior authorization was 90%. There was no ability to audit, like, are these all appropriate? And because they were sharing the rebates, there was some concern there. And so even in sometimes the rebate contracts with the manufacturer, they have limits on what they can clinically manage. So there's certainly a conflict of interest. And so we think that this prior authorization approval is a big deal. So as you're evaluating your current pharmacy benefit manager, ask them, what is your prior authorization approval rate for your book of business? And then understand what the prior authorization approval rate is for your plan. I think those are two really valid questions to ask your PBM that you're partnering with today. And if you're evaluating pharmacy benefit managers, certainly ask about the different PBMs that you're evaluating. What is their prior authorization approval rate for their business? A couple others in this same case study that we implemented. So the medications that were filled at the PBM-owned pharmacy, we talked about what that looks like, and those generic specialty medications filled by the PBM were not subject to maximum allowable pricing, and so there was definitely some downside. And we were looking for some pricing that was more favorable to the client versus what we had before. So when we added up kind of all of these clinical solutions for a client, we were able to save about $185,000 off of $700,000 of kind of eligible specialty spend. So a pretty big savings opportunity versus a very wide open formulary. And this was something that we did a couple years ago for a client, and they've taken some additional steps to manage their spend. They're not afraid to be progressive. And so if you're a company today that's self-funded or fully insured, and you're thinking about self-funding, the thing that I want to emphasize here is, if you have a very wide open pharmacy, the high costs, the risks out there to your plan are not lessening. They're growing from a cost standpoint, from a what's coming in the marketplace. And so, once the cat is out of the bag or the genie's out of the bottle on some of these things, it's really hard to dial back. If you have low utilization today, be proactive and put in place some of these clinical management opportunities that may exist, and eliminate having to do it after you have a bunch of utilization in your plan. Once the genie's out of the bottle, it's really hard to put them back in. So it's really important, I think, especially in the environment that we're in and that we're moving forward, that continues to have these high cost drugs. Be really proactive with what you're doing as it relates to pharmacy. A couple of tips and tricks when you're selecting a pharmacy benefit partner. Perhaps, consider today the most traditional method for partnering with a PBM is a model where you're sharing rebates with the pharmacy benefit manager. So, you might have an 80-20 split where the plan shares 80% of the rebates, and the pharmacy benefit manager gets to retain 20% of those rebates. There's a lot of PBMs out there, and many of them do a great job where they get no rebates. And instead of a rebate, you pay a higher admin fee, but it's a set cost. And in our view, I think that creates less of a conflict of interest for the pharmacy benefit manager. Make sure you understand if there's any other alternative revenue streams with those admin fee-based PBMs. That's really important. Some may say, well, we're a transparent model. That's a pretty popular term that's out there. Excuse me. But in the reality is they may be getting some kind of consulting fee or marketing fee from some of the manufacturers to place drugs on their formulary. And so be aware of revenue streams. Ask those questions when you're selecting PBMs. We think that a transparent pricing model is really important. So don't chase rebates. Make sure you're working with a partner who's really going after the lowest net cost drug in the marketplace. And if you have an admin fee, a transparent based PBM, they should be utilizing lowest net cost pricing anyways, because there's no incentive for them to be generating more rebate revenue unless it is a low net cost product that benefits the plan. Make sure that they have flexible contract terms. Many of the PBMs, if you're a small plan with limited purchasing power, they may not be as flexible in negotiating the contract. That would be less favorable to the plan. And so contract terms are really important. Contracts drive cost. And so make sure that your PBM, you have the ability to negotiate what's in the contract as it relates to the terms in the contract. Additionally, we think that coupon management is really important, and we'll talk a little bit about what that means. Part of it has to do with the out-of-pocket accumulators. Another part of it is maybe utilizing those coupons to reduce other costs within the plan. Make sure that you're getting the opportunity to look at the data analytics. Part of that, the last bullet point here, is the ability to audit. Auditing is really an important check with PBMs. Explore whether there are income-based assistance programs. That's certainly under scrutiny lately. We'll talk a little bit more about that, and the ability to manage a contract on an annual basis. You may have a multi-year guarantee, but contract terms change, and with a PBM, if mid contract the markets move significantly from a pricing standpoint, you want to have the flexibility with the PBM partner to improve pricing to benefit your plan. And I talked about the ability audit. The other thing here is it's a bit of a unicorn, but it's gaining traction, is a PBM, a fiduciary PBM. Certainly been talked about a lot. If you find one, kind of like a unicorn, document it, remember it, because you might not see it very frequently. But with a fiduciary PBM, they're putting the client's interests above their own, and so it ideally would limit some of the games that PBMs play and the lack of transparency. because they have a fiduciary responsibility to do what's in the best interest of the client versus what's in their best interest as a business. And so there's definitely some emerging players in the marketplace who are touting themselves to be fiduciaries, and they are by law required to hold themselves to a much higher standard, but they're pretty limited out there. I mentioned the ability to audit. I highly encourage groups to audit their PBM on an annual basis and identify, are they meeting the contract terms that they've agreed to from a pricing standpoint? Are they meeting the contract terms that they've agreed to from a rebate standpoint? I've got a note here, and if you talk to folks who've worked at PBMs, they expect that many of their clients will not audit what they're doing, and so there's often intentional underperformance by the PBM. So make sure that you're auditing those on a regular basis, on an annual basis, and that there's some accountability that they will true up and meet their financial guarantees. This is a quick primer on how rebates work. It's a very simplified slide here, but it gives you an idea of how it works. In this case, the individual paid $408 for this particular drug, insulin, and insulin here. And, rolling through the chart there, the manufacturer, of course, makes the drug. There's a wholesaler that's involved. The manufacturer buys the drug, and they paid $380 to the manufacturer. The manufacturer's list price was $400. They retained $100 of that. The pharmacy that maybe dispenses the drug, they retain $27.50. The PBM retains $55.50. And the health plan sponsor, because they get a rebate, retains $223, and their net price to the plan is $177. Depending on whether the member actually, has met their deductible or out of pocket, the cost that they paid is $408. So the manufacturer who made the drug, again, $100 was their piece. The drug costs $408. That and the plan portion. So really, this is a distorted game. Is what I'm trying to drive here. That the manufacturer's cost with their profit margin, assumably built in, is about $100, and it's going to vary by drug. This is not the reality for every single drug in the marketplace. There is an R&D cost, but the point with the example is there's a lot of hands in the pie that drive up the cost of drugs for the plan and for members. Certainly that's a concern, and there's a lot of games being played to maximize profits for some of these middlemen in between the health plan sponsor and the manufacturer that is really hard to track down and manage on a regular basis. For fully insured plans, many insurance carriers that you're buying from today to offer health plans to your employees, they don't pass on those rebates to you, the plan sponsor, or to the member. And so oftentimes you're being kind of penalized when you have members who are taking drugs with large rebates. That's hitting your bottom line, and they're not necessarily giving you credit for that. So there are certainly fully insured carriers out there that do account for the rebates and give you credit for that, and understand what that is and how that impacts your plan. If you're working with an insurance carrier who doesn't give you that credit, insist on it. If you know that you have high pharmacy utilization, insist that, hey, we know a portion of this spend is rebate driven, and we should get credit. We shouldn't be penalized for that because you are retaining those rebates, insurance carrier. For self-funded plans, again, evaluate whether the PBM that you work with is retaining a portion of rebates. Many of my clients utilize pass-through PBMs that pass through all rebates to the client, and that's really important. because there's certainly a conflict of interest here for the PBM if they're retaining rebates. Most of the PBMs that we work with, certainly not all of them, but many of them are only charging the admin fee, and that is where they make their profit, is on admin fee. It's a known amount up front. So I mentioned rebate chasing in an earlier slide. What does that mean? Well, again, we'll use insulin here as an example. These are 3 common insulins on the far left. You may be familiar with them and the approximate price tag. And now in the marketplace, there are these alternatives. So why does our plan have Humalog on our formulary when Lispro is $82? Again, oftentimes, I hate to be the cynic, but oftentimes it goes back to the rebates. You can see there's a significant amount of rebate dollars in some of those earlier slides. If our PBM is getting a share of the rebates, they're going to limit their formulary and be much more interested in the high cost drug because they're sharing in a portion of those rebates. And that's true for all of these insulin product examples. And there's certainly other examples in the marketplace, but this is the one area on the plan where we see a lot of games being played with alternative drugs and manufacturers, PBMs, they're going to continue to try to maintain and preserve their revenue streams in some of these areas. I mentioned coupon management earlier. In the first example, our client was utilizing coupons, and that was helping to generate some of that savings. We talked about 25% savings on eligible spend. In this example, Humira, it's the most common specialty drug in kind of in the marketplace. The cost, now there are certainly now some alternative Humira therapies, but on average, it costs about $5,000 a year. Humira as a manufacturer, they were offering up until this year about $12,000 of annual copay assistance to members, meaning that members were getting essentially a debit card that they could swipe to reduce their out-of-pocket costs. So kind of in the example, this goes along with that first client example. The specialty price, $5,000, the planned copay, $500, coupon assistance, they were only using about $500 per month of coupon assistance. So they were only using half of the available coupon based on the structure of the way that the plan was set up initially. The member would have a $5 out-of-pocket cost, and the plan would pay $4,500. Even though the actual member out-of-pocket was $5, the member was getting credit for $500. So this is that coupon maximum, or excuse me, the true up of the accumulator was something that we needed to fix with this particular client. So when we switched and implemented kind of the strategy that we had discussed in our first example, the specialty price of the drug, $5,000 still. We switched the plan to a 20% coinsurance, and the coupon assistance then we were able to use for $995. The member pays $5 out of pocket. Now the plan's cost is $400. That's a savings of $500 to the plan per month. And the actual member out of pocket was adjusted now. Instead of getting credit for $500, they were only actually paying $5. That's what we were crediting to their out of pocket maximum each month. And so the member actually came out the same, and we were able to adjust the plan to take advantage of that coupon. On this particular drug, that's an 11% savings per month from what we were experiencing before. And, with specialty meds, nearly every specialty med has a coupon available to help offset out-of-pocket costs. And the way that this was utilized, we're able to adjust our plan design to better benefit the plan while not creating any additional burden for the member. So if you know that you have high specialty utilization and you're not taking advantage of coupons today, this is certainly pretty low-hanging fruit to look at some significant savings on a monthly basis to your plan. If you're getting data today, you can often dive into a number of areas within the data. We certainly look at what channels are our drugs coming from on our plan. So in some cases, some of these specialty meds are being dispensed in a hospital or physician office setting. There can be really big disparities between those sites of delivery. So if a drug is dispensed in the physician's office or a hospital, it can cost much more than if you have someone come to the member's home to do an infusion of some of these specialty drugs. And so, select a partner who has the ability to help manage that site of service and make that more efficient for your plan. We talked about utilization and prior authorization in some detail. Again, I think this is really important. If you're getting data, you can often determine the prior authorization yourself. The PBM certainly will know, but something you can look at within the data that you have. And then, in addition to the pharmacy channel, there are also prescription drugs that are coming through the medical channel. Those are identified through J codes in the data that your health plan generates if you're self-funded. And we find that often there's different pricing in the medical channel versus the PBM channel. And we've worked with some clients to say you have to purchase the drug through the PBM channel, not the medical channel, to help, again, manage that cost to keep it more effective. So when you're looking at your pharmacy spend, also understand what's coming through your medical channel and have an analysis of what are called the J code codes within the medical data or within the plan data that you have, and identify, do we have a problem here that needs to be addressed as well? That's certainly becoming more common. So quick time check here. We've got about 15 minutes left. I'll just run through this second case study. And this pretty quickly, in this case, this was a client who wanted to take even more. So they, different client, but they'd already implemented the steps that were in place in case study 1. But they decided, this specialty drug continues to be a huge problem for us. What else can we do? In this case, they put in place a pharmacy overlay. Essentially, they've excluded a number of specialty meds from their plan, and then they assist their members with finding alternatives locations to for those drugs. So in some cases, they'll help patients find the drugs from an international channel. In some cases, income-based assistance exists for members who don't have access to those drugs within those plan. And how those income assistance programs work, they're tied to the federal poverty level. And the larger the household, the larger the income. So it's pretty interesting. But if you have a family of 3, you can earn up to $106,000 and potentially qualify for some drugs, specialty drugs, at no or very limited cost. And those are opportunities that are available for many of the many, if not most of the specialty drugs in the marketplace. This particular income-based assistance program are under some scrutiny. I'd be happy to share more detail about that if you have any questions about that, but there is some scrutiny by the drug manufacturers right now as it relates to these programs, and there's some press on that. If you are utilizing this and you have any questions, I'd be happy to talk to you offline about what that looks like. I mentioned that they're helping their employees find drugs from international locations. In many cases, you can get the same drug in Canada that you can in the United States for 25 to 50% less than what you pay here. That's a significant discount for the international channel. And the plan cannot procure the drugs internationally, but they can provide information to their employees to purchase those drugs internationally. And certainly plans are doing that. It's cheaper for the member, it's cheaper for the plan, and both parties benefit. And then one other thing that the client was doing was doing some genetic testing to ensure clinical effectiveness. This client was self-funded. They had about 120 employees in the plan. And before they implemented this, their pharmacy spend relatively low on a PEPM basis, $271,000. After they implemented this strategy, their costs went down about 47%. So it was definitely beneficial for them to put in this pharmacy benefit overlay and identify where there are opportunities maybe to purchase the drugs more efficiently. Some emerging strategies that we're seeing in the space. There's financing options for essentially prepaying or buying fully insured products for certain drugs. There's a shift to value-based contracts with PBMs. I'm not seeing a ton of utilization there because there's still the cost of many of these high-cost drugs. PBMs are offering financial protection, so the fully insured conditions, they're saying, we won't penalize you for this because they're essentially buying insurance for some of those drugs. And then, in addition, some PBMs and other vendors within the value chain or within the chain of your health benefit plan, that could be the TPA, could be a stop-loss carrier offering fully insured carve-outs for certain conditions like gene therapy. So if you have this condition, if you pay $1 per employee per month, these costs vary depending on the condition, we won't penalize you. You won't be charged on the plan for these conditions. Kind of like transplant carve-outs and stop-loss exist today. Some of these fully insured carve-outs are being placed on some of these really rare genetic conditions that are being treated with drugs. Lastly, here are a couple of solutions that are available. If you're fully insured and you're saying, we don't have a lot of levers to push, I mean, you're absolutely right. There's not a lot of levers for you. If this is something that you keep dealing with on a regular basis, your costs are increasing and you're exasperated because you don't have a lot of options, I encourage you to, explore self-funding. You have more control when you're self-funding, and there's a lot more you can do. You maybe will get benefit of the rebates. You can, employ some of the strategies that we've discussed instead of being kind of stuck on that roller coaster of what your fully insured carrier is doing. If you are fully insured and you're not comfortable self-funding, make sure your fully insured carrier is giving you credit for the rebates it receives when you go through the renewal and underwriting process. And maybe consider partnering with a fully insured carrier that gives pricing credit to members at the point of sale to reduce your costs for the plan and for members. There are certainly some carriers that are offering that. For self-funded groups, exclude brand name drugs. Move to a co-insurance instead of co-pays for drugs. Require mail order for many of the generics. There's some savings there. Maximize coupons. There's a good example in the presentation here. Explore a pharmacy benefit overlay. That's kind of the last example of different steps that might exist to help better manage costs. And make sure you select the right PBM partner. Again, the PBM partner really can have a significant impact on your success. And then if you can find it, partner with a fiduciary PBM. Those relationships are out there. They're rare, but if you look hard, there's certainly some emerging PBMs that are agreeing to be a fiduciary as it relates to their PBM relationship with your health plan. And then on this last slide, just some solutions that would be available to your employees to help them save on RX costs. Encourage them to be, really the key is good consumers. Utilize generics, look for coupons, find the lowest cost retail provider. GoodRx is a great resource for that. Educate them on the value of mail order drugs. I have some clients who have mandatory mail order. You could certainly do that. And then, in some cases, it may make sense for the employee to utilize international channels for lower cost drugs. So with that, I know I moved quickly at the end there, but I wanted to finish up and make sure that we had time for any question and answer here in the last 6 minutes. So Cassie, you want to open it up to any questions?
Yeah, so all participants should have a little Q&A button at the bottom of their Zoom. You can also use the chat if that's easier for you. And you are welcome to ask anything about all the topics that we have discussed today. Everyone, a couple seconds here.
And will I see the questions, Cassie, or will you just read them to me?
I'll just read them out if they pop in.
Perfect.
All right, no questions coming in so far. You must have covered everything very thoroughly. All right, well, I guess thank you everyone for joining us. We really appreciate you coming in and staying for giving up part of your morning to learn about all of these employee benefits trends. Here are the HRCI codes and these SHRM codes. Oh, thank you. Karen says, thank you. We appreciate you guys coming in and learning about these things. If you have any recommendations or suggestions for topics in the employee benefits world, feel free to reach out to me. We love learning about very different and emerging topics in employee benefits. So if you have any questions about things coming through, you just let us know, and we'd love to put on a webinar for you. All right. Well, everyone have a great rest of your morning and have a great day as well.
Thank you.